There are people who make us believe they could never fall. Ace Frehley was one of them, the man with the silver face, the one who made guitars fly and turned every stage into his own universe. He survived years of alcohol, drugs, accidents, and loneliness, only to return each time brighter, wilder, as if mocking fate itself. People once thought the Spaceman was immortal, an alien lost among humans, existing only to light up the sky of rock and roll. But even the brightest stars eventually run out of fuel. And when that silver glow faded, the world didn't roar. It fell silent. No one quite knew what to call that feeling: loss, gratitude, or simply emptiness. Ace Frehley wasn't just the guitarist of Kiss. He was the soul of music that dared to defy limits, a symbol for the lost who found themselves in piercing riffs. Every time his Les Paul smoked, it wasn't just a stage effect. It was his way of telling the world, "I'm still alive. I'm still flying." This story isn't merely a farewell to a legend. It's a retelling of the Spaceman's final journey, from the farewells of friends and fans to the truth behind that fatal fall, the private life few ever saw, and the legacy he left behind for a world that once believed he came from another planet. When a star falls from the sky, its light doesn't vanish right away. It lingers somewhere, reflected through the souls that once shared its journey. So it was with Ace Frehley. His death didn't just leave a void on stage. It sent ripples across the rock world, echoes that reached every heart, from those who began with him to generations raised on the sound of his guitar. Gene Simmons was the first to speak. There were no grand words, only a quiet, heavy sorrow. "Our hearts are broken. Ace has passed on. No one can touch Ace's legacy. I know he loved the fans." Simmons, who had built Kiss with Ace, lived through years of breakups, conflicts, and reconciliations, spoke like an older brother looking back at a closed era. In his words was not only grief, but also recognition. Ace was the irreplaceable soul of the band that once shook the world. Soon after, Peter Criss, Kiss's original drummer, wrote on Facebook, "With a broken heart and deep, deep sadness, my brother, Ace Frehley, has passed away. He died peacefully with his family around him. My wife and I were with him to the end as well. I love you, my brother." It was no longer the voice of a colleague. It was the sob of a brother. Chris's words felt like the drum beats he once played, raw, honest, and straight to the heart. In that pain, one could still hear the memories of 4 young men once roaming across America in an old van, carrying nothing but dreams and the smell of cigarette smoke. Paul Stanley, who had stood shoulder to shoulder with Ace through the band's most glorious years, chose a more intimate way to remember him, posting an old photo on Instagram. "I remember 1974 being in my room at the Hyatt on Sunset in LA, and I heard someone playing deep and fiery guitar in the room next door. I thought, boy, I wish that guy was in the band. I looked over the balcony. It was Ace. This is my favorite photo of us." That little story wasn't just a memory. It was the beginning of everything, of Detroit Rock City, cold gin, and of the millions of young dreamers who once longed to wear makeup and burn bright on stage. Across the world, Slash of Guns N' Roses wrote on X. "Hard to believe and process this devastating news today. Ace, I will miss you, and millions more will too. Rest in peace, my friend. One of the true great rock and roll guitarists. The Spaceman has left the planet now." From one rebel spirit of the next generation, it was a bow to the pioneer. Slash knew that without Ace, players like him, and the entire fiery guitar era of the 80s might never have existed. Steve Vai, on Instagram, penned a eulogy both reverent and admiring. Ace Frehley was the embodiment of rock and roll attitude, unapologetic, loud, and irresistibly catchy. His riffs had swagger, his tone had bite, and his presence lit up stages like a supernova. The Spaceman has left the stage, but his orbit will shine forever. For Vai, the man who turned guitar technique into art, what made him bow to Ace wasn't complexity, but pure energy. That raw voltage capable of setting a stage on fire with just 3 chords. In an interview with Ultimate Classic Rock, Alice Cooper spoke with a trembling voice. Ace was an absolute guitar hero to so many people. I did more tours with him than anybody else. We became quite good friends, and he always brought it every night. He did it every night. And it's just hard to see somebody like that go. It sounded like the lament of a man watching time take away his friends, one legend after another. Ace was an ace, he concluded, short but saying it all. And Mike McCready of Pearl Jam, who once shared the stage with Ace at Madison Square Garden, wrote, "I would not have picked up a guitar without Ace and Kiss's influence. Rip it out, Ace. You changed my life." From the metal side, those born in the flames of the 80s also bowed their heads. Pantera posted on X, "Rest in peace, Ace. We're so beyond sad to hear of Ace's passing. Both Ace and Kiss were a huge influence on all of Pantera, but especially Dimebag Darrell. Dime's obsession with Ace dates back to his early childhood. You will be missed, Ace." They didn't need to say much. Everyone already knew. Dimebag Darrell, the man who made the guitar roar like thunder, began that journey by watching a Spaceman on TV and dreaming of holding that same silver Les Paul. That tribute wasn't just a farewell. It was the closing of a circle between 2 generations of rebels. Then came Tom Morello, who had once inducted Kiss into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He wrote on X, "My first guitar hero, Ace Frehley, has passed away. The legendary Space Ace inspired generations to love rock and roll and rock guitar playing. His timeless riffs, the smoke from his Les Paul, the rockets shooting from his headstock, unforgettable. Thank you, Ace, for a lifetime of great music and memories." A short goodbye. But if you listen closely, every image, the smoke, the fire, the manic laughter, was the language of Ace himself. Morello didn't just remember the sound. He remembered how Ace made music come alive, how he turned the guitar from an instrument into a ritual of freedom. In Canada, Geddy Lee of Rush recalled in a post, "Back in 1974, as the opening act for Kiss, Alex, Neil, and I spent many nights hanging out in his hotel room after shows, doing whatever nonsense we could think of just to make him break out his infectious laugh. He was an undeniable character and an authentic rock star. Thanks for welcoming us newbies into the rock and roll world." No longer a distant legend, just 3 young men trying to make that silver-faced guy laugh. But it was that laughter, carefree and pure amid the exhaustion of touring, that revealed the truth. Behind the silver paint was a real man, kind and warm-hearted. Bret Michaels of Poison wrote on Instagram, "Ace, my brother, I surely cannot thank you enough for the years of great music, the many festivals we've done together, and your lead guitar on Nothing But a Good Time. All my love and respect from my family and myself. May you rest in peace." That phrase, "my brother," echoed across social media. It wasn't a cliche. It was real. In a world of egos and rivalries, everyone saw Ace as an older brother, a man who never turned away anyone who came to learn. And finally, John 5, his close friend for 35 years, wrote, "I am so shocked and saddened that this happened to my hero and my friend. I've known Ace since 1988, and we've been very close ever since then. Ace changed the world. He influenced millions of people and changed my life. I will miss you, my friend. Short, sincere, and impossible to fake. When someone calls another man my hero after 3 decades of friendship, it's no longer just words. It's pain. From Gene to Slash, from Alice Cooper to the younger generations, they all said the same thing. Without Ace Frehley, they wouldn't have become who they are. An artist only becomes immortal when his sound continues to live within others, and these tributes proved it, not as cries of sorrow, but as the final harmony of a brotherhood that even death couldn't silence. As the artist's farewells echoed across the world, the rest of the world joined in. The media, once a circus of gossip and scuttlebutt, turned into a vast canopy sheltering the truth of a legend gone. Fans, from loyal Kiss Army veterans to kids picking up guitars for the first time, all stopped, bowed their heads, and sent one final note to the Spaceman. Major music outlets like Rolling Stone, Billboard, and Pitchfork quickly published memorial pieces, emphasizing that Ace Frehley was one of the most underrated yet profoundly influential guitarists of all time. Cincinnati.com reported his net worth and time of death, but devoted half the article to memories, friends' reactions, and the emotional weight of the loss, transforming news into a shared grief. On social media, hashtags RIPace and the Spaceman spread rapidly. His old tracks were replayed. His solos watched again and again, as if the world was trying to hold on to his shadow. Fans in Detroit, New York, and Tokyo laid flowers outside old venues, some wearing silver masks, some holding miniature guitars, others just standing in silence, listening to Rock and Roll All Night from a portable speaker. Kiss Army forums overflowed with messages. He made me believe rock could fly again. Without him, Kiss is half of what I loved. I'm 45 now, but still blast New York groove every morning. Today, my eyes sting. Some fans shared small stories, how they felt uneasy the night before Ace's passing, or how they randomly played a Kiss song, and his guitar seemed to echo through their room. One person hung a black and white poster by the window and stayed up all night waiting for updates. And among all those voices, from admiration to heartbreak, disbelief to reflection, one truth emerged. Ace's death wasn't just another entertainment headline, it was a ritual moment. The artist stepping off the stage while his music, his memory, and his gratitude kept performing. But behind all those loving farewells, one question still lingered. What really happened in the Spaceman's final hours? The answer, like the man himself, was far from simple, and it began with a fall that seemed harmless. No one thought Ace Frehley would leave this world that way. Not in a car crash, not from drugs or alcohol, but from 2 falls. 2 seemingly minor moments, yet enough to end the journey of a man who once defied gravity through his music. According to the music universe, that night at his home in New Jersey, Ace fell twice in succession. He reportedly fell twice, severely injuring his head during the second fall. The first fall happened in the living room, a minor slip that didn't alarm those around him. Ace laughed it off, saying, "I'm fine," just like every rocker who treated pain as part of the trade. But a few hours later, when he went back upstairs to the studio, where his familiar silver Les Paul still stood beside the amp, the second fall came. And this time, there was no, "I'm fine." According to People, when he was found, Ace was unconscious, his breathing faint, blood seeping from the back of his head. Doctors diagnosed a severe cerebral hemorrhage, a massive brain bleed, the direct result of head trauma. His family rushed him to a hospital in Clifton, but within hours, every attempt to save him failed. He suffered a massive brain bleed following a fall at his home and was placed on life support before his family made the difficult decision to let him go. People. Magazine. The words, "let him go," sounded like the end of a song, a note someone was forced to release. Jeanette, his estranged but ever-devoted wife, was there, along with his daughter Monique. They held his hands, softly played Fractured Mirror in the ICU, and watched the heart monitor's glow slowly fade. Sources close to the family revealed that in the weeks before the fall, Ace often complained of dizziness and loss of balance. At 74, after years of exhaustion from alcohol and relentless touring, his nervous system had significantly weakened. He once joked in an interview with Ultimate Guitar, "Age hits you differently when you've lived this hard." No one realized it would sound like a prophecy. Old age crept in like a mistuned recording, slower, heavier, unstoppable. When the news broke, Rolling Stone called it a quiet ending to one of rock's loudest lives. TMZ added a haunting detail. In the room where he fell, the silver Les Paul was still plugged in, the amp still on, and the second string snapped, as if Ace had paused mid-song to reach for something. The fall may have come right between two notes. His family later said that in those final moments, his guitar was still softly humming in the background, as though Ace was sending himself off with the sound he loved most. But there was one strange, painful question fans couldn't stop asking. Why did it happen twice? Doctors pointed to a weakened nervous system, low blood pressure, and loss of balance. Yet those closest to him believed something deeper, that Ace was simply too tired to stand up one more time. The first fall was an accident. The second, perhaps destiny. And if you look closer, the double fall wasn't just the tragedy of one night. It was a metaphor for his entire life. The first fall, when fame pulled him away from Kiss. The second, when time pulled him away from himself. Yet even as his body gave way, his legacy and his bonds stood firm. Outside the hospital room, two women never left the name Ace Frehley, the wife who never stopped caring and the daughter who once gave him a reason to quit drinking. If the stage was where Ace Frehley lived like a star, then behind the curtain he was just a clumsy man in love, always searching for something his guitar could never fill. Ace met Jeanette Treratola in the early 1970s, when Kiss was still struggling to find its path amid New York's chaotic glam rock scene. She was an Italian girl from the Bronx, petite but strong, working in a fashion boutique near the band's rehearsal space. Jeanette once said what caught her attention wasn't Ace's long hair or leather jacket, but the childlike eyes behind the silver and black makeup. They started dating soon after, and in 1976, Ace married her, just months after Destroyer was released, turning Kiss into a global phenomenon. But that same spotlight began to burn their happiness. Ace was gone for months on tour, lost in the endless road across America, while Jeanette stayed in New York with their young daughter, Monique Frehley, born in 1980. In a rare interview, Jeanette said, "Being married to a rock star is like living with a ghost. You see his face on TV, but not at the breakfast table." Through the 1980s, as Kiss reached its peak, Ace spiraled out of control. He drove drunk, got arrested for speeding, and fell deep into nights of cocaine and whiskey. Friends recalled Jeanette's desperate attempts to save him, how she once showed up at his studio just to clean away the empty bottles and leave a note. "You're losing more than your band." But Ace didn't listen. Their marriage didn't collapse from lack of love. It fell apart from too much silence. They separated in the late 1990s, but never officially divorced. Jeanette kept the name Frehley on legal documents, still called him my husband, and stood by him during his hardest times, including the day he was taken to the hospital before his death. With his daughter, Monique, Ace's relationship was a long path toward redemption. In his memoir, No Regrets, 2011, he admitted, "I missed too many birthdays, too many recitals. I was there for the crowds, but not for her." After sobering up in the early 2000s, he took the initiative to reconnect. Father and daughter appeared together at the 2014 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction when Kiss was honored. Monique was the one person Ace never hid anything from. Not even his fear of aging or being forgotten. A close friend once said, "She was his anchor." When he looked at her, he saw the one thing he didn't destroy. As for his finances, people assumed a legend like Ace Frehley would leave behind a fortune. But when the official figure was released, the rock world fell silent. According to Celebrity Net Worth and the Cincinnati Enquirer, his estate was valued at only around $1 million at the time of his death. A shocking number considering Ace helped build the Kiss empire, a brand that earned hundreds of millions annually from tours, merchandise, films, and image licensing. In his final years, Ace lived modestly in his Clifton, New Jersey home, converted into a personal studio filled with dozens of guitars, vintage posters, and a small corner for family photos. The house was once part of a property portfolio that included a residence in Wilton, Connecticut, bought after his Kiss years, and later rented out through Airbnb for extra income. In No Regrets, he half joked, half confessed, "I'm not rich like Gene or Paul, but I've got peace. And that's more expensive than money." In truth, that peace came with a price. Years before his death, Ace faced a financial crisis, tax debts, unpaid mortgages, and the looming threat of losing his home due to over $700,000 in missed payments, according to records cited by the Times of India and Merca 20. He sold off many of his prized guitars, including several limited edition Gibson Les Pauls gifted by the company itself, each worth between $40,000 and $50,000. Just to pay debts and keep his studio running. One of those guitars, the legendary silver Les Paul, was still plugged in and powered on the night he fell. But Ace's real wealth wasn't in the bank. After his death, it was revealed that he had quietly re-registered the publishing rights to dozens of his recordings, ensuring that royalties would go directly to Jeanette and his daughter Monique. He also left a small portion of his estate to the Rock and Roll Forever Foundation, a nonprofit that teaches children to play music for free, as if handing over the keys of rock to the next generation. That contrast between the bright lights of the stage and an almost empty bank account was the true face of rock life. A man who once set the stage on fire, yet chose to spend his final years in quiet simplicity, with no bodyguards and neighbors who didn't even know who he was. When asked why he hadn't saved more money, Ace just laughed. "You can't take gold records to heaven." That line now sounds like an unspoken will, the words of a man who lived entirely for music and left this world carrying nothing but the echo of his guitar between two beats of silence. After his passing, reports confirmed that Jeanette and Monique would be his legal heirs, with a portion of the estate going to the Rock and Roll Forever Foundation, the very fund Ace supported to help children discover music. But the truest thing he left behind wasn't measurable in dollars. It was how he managed to hold on to love, the bond with his family that outlasted the chaos of fame. That final embrace between Jeanette and Monique didn't just close a life, it opened the peace he had searched for half a century. A close friend told Billboard after the funeral, "He didn't die alone. That's what mattered to him the most. And maybe, after all the running, Ace Frehley had finally made it home. Before fate closed its final curtain, Ace Frehley had one last conversation. Calm, sincere, and deeply symbolic. No more blinding stage lights, no more silver makeup or sparks flying from his guitar neck. Just a 74-year-old man speaking quietly about simple things, music, memories, and how he wished to be remembered. He reminisced about his youth, learning guitar alone in a small Bronx room, teaching himself riff by riff from Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, and Pete Townshend. "I never took a guitar lesson," he said with a proud smile, "but I learned from the best." Then he recalled the night he first saw Led Zeppelin at the Fillmore East, a memory still vivid after half a century. "I was 17, and after they went off, half the crowd left. I felt sorry for the headliner." When asked about his earliest Kiss memories, Ace's eyes lit up like a kid's. "I remember driving in the Bronx and one of our songs came on the radio. I pulled over, I was shaking, I made it." That was the moment that defined his entire life. Not when the crowd screamed his name, but when his own guitar filled the streets of his hometown. And when asked why he left the band, he didn't flinch. "One of the reasons I left the group, Gene got carried away with the merchandising. It kind of took away from the music." There was no bitterness in his tone, just the weariness of a man who had watched art turn into commerce. Then, he picked up his silver Les Paul, a replica of the 1959 model he'd once called his Lucky Charm. "They gave me 12, he laughed. "I lined them all up and took pictures. This was the best-sounding one." That smile, tinged with nostalgia, was the last trace of a man who had always believed that every guitar has a soul. But perhaps the line that left everyone silent was when he confessed, "I hope they remember the playing, not the antics." A plea as light as a breath, yet carrying his final wish. To be remembered as a true musician, not merely a stage persona. No one knew it would be his last conversation. That voice, those eyes, the gentle smile tinged with fatigue, heard again now. They feel like a musical testament, not mournful, not tragic, just peaceful, like a man who had completed his journey and was finally free. Maybe, in that very moment, Ace Frehley knew he was leaving, but he still laughed, still told stories, still cradled his silver Les Paul, as if another show was waiting somewhere out there among the stars. In the mid-1970s, as music swung between rebellion and spectacle, a boy from the Bronx stepped onto the stage with silver eyes and a smoking guitar. Nobody knew his real name back then. They only knew the Spaceman. And from that moment on, Ace Frehley ceased to be just a man. He became a symbol. Born in 1951 to a working-class German-American family, Ace grew up amid the rumble of subway trains and the heartbeat of New York City. He had no formal training, couldn't read sheet music, but possessed an extraordinary ear. While others his age chased stability, Ace chose the guitar as his escape. In a cramped Bronx bedroom, he practiced until his fingers bled, borrowing a friend's old amp, believing, "Music is my one-way ticket out of here." In 1973, he showed up at an audition for a small band called Kiss, and within minutes, destiny was sealed. When Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons asked what made him special, Ace didn't talk. He plugged in his guitar and played a blistering solo. No words were needed. They all knew they'd found their missing piece. With his trademark silver star makeup, Frehley quickly became the soul of the stage. He didn't just play guitar, he set it on fire. In every concert, fans watched his Les Paul smoke, spark, and blaze like a rocket taking off. Beneath the theatrics, though, lay impeccable craft. Bends that screamed, vibratos that ached, and phrasing that cut straight to the raw heart of rock. When Kiss released Alive. In 1975, Ace's guitar on She, Cold Gin, and Rock and Roll All Night redefined American hard rock. He wasn't as flashy as Van Halen, nor as heavy as Iommi, but every note he played carried a primal emotion, wild, lonely, and real. But with light came shadow. As Kiss grew into a global empire, Ace began to feel lost within the machinery of fame. Backstage, he drank more and laughed less. Gene and Paul talked about contracts. Ace only wanted to talk about music. By 1982, after mounting tension, he left the band, the first collapse in a life that fans would later call the first fall. What seemed like an ending, though, became proof of survival. In the mid-1980s, Ace returned with Frehley's Comet, a band fueled by restless spirit and defiance. His solo album, Ace Frehley, 1978, released alongside solo efforts from the other Kiss members, stood alone as a triumph, its hit New York Groove climbing the Billboard Hot 100. Years later, Ace laughed about it. "The other guys were making records. I was making history.